All right, we're live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to my channel, FanZcene. I'm Greg. You can call me Greg Andrew. Today, I'm talking with Andrew Hawkins of In Search of Tomorrow, the definitive 80s sci-fi documentary. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on, Greg. This is awesome. I love the fact that you invited me, and I can't wait to talk about In Search of Tomorrow and whatever we want to get into.
Exactly. So as everybody starts to come in, explain what In Search of Tomorrow is and what you guys are doing with that.
Yeah. So this is a new movie that we are making, a huge mega documentary, the marathon doc, 4 hours plus, huge comprehensive celebration and retrospective of 80s sci-fi. In Search of Tomorrow is the biggest 80s science fiction documentary ever made. And we're in the middle of the last couple of days of our campaign. And it's exciting because we've been announcing all of these different cast members that are going to be on board talking about these films. We've been having these amazing watch parties with the community that we have found is just in love with these movies. It's just great. But the film is in production and we are moving forward on it every day, and it's a blast.
It's awesome. I'm really looking forward to this. When I watched your guys, I did my reaction to your guys' trailer, and I literally had goosebumps for real. It's like seeing all these movies from RoboCop, Predator, Blade Runner. It was amazing. It's like I was reliving my childhood watching this. It was so great. And you guys are going to get a lot of celebrity and director cameos in this to talk about these, right?
Yeah. We have a huge amount of people who were in front of the camera in these movies, actors, actresses, directors, writers, members of the crew. One of the biggest, for me personally, people that we have on board for this is Phil Tippett, who was responsible for all of the stop motion armatures and figures that show up in the Star Wars series. Yeah. His work is incredible, and I'm a total tech geek guy, especially when it comes to the behind the scenes creation of the special effects and practical effects. So it's stuff like that I can't wait to show everybody that we're putting together for this movie.
That's awesome. I love practical effects. Nothing against CGI, but I love practical effects. A movie is just like in the 80s when they made these movies. There's like so much more creativity that went into them and storytelling than I think there is now personally. But yeah, I can't wait to hear about that. I love classic special effects in Star Wars.
It's
awesome.
I mean, of course, we're going to be touching on Star Wars. That's one of the biggest of the entire era. But it's going to be Star Wars, Star Trek, just like you were talking about, RoboCop, Blade Runner, Predator, Terminator, and then just going down the list to the deeper and deeper cuts that some of us might have forgotten over the years and some of us still love. I'm all about genre movies and those deep cuts from the VHS store. So bringing this all together is just huge for us. It's going to be so cool.
I'm so looking forward to this. Awesome. I recently just watched 2 80s movies I have never seen before, and I don't know why they've escaped me, but I watched Flash Gordon.
Yes,
I loved it. I'm gonna do a first time watch review for my channel here soon, and I watched Chopping Mall. I love that movie.
Awesome.
That was so great. I can't believe I've never seen either one of those movies before, and I just watched them and I was like, what have I been missing out on all my life? They were so good. They were so good.
And 2 completely different sides of 80s sci-fi too. You've got Flash Gordon, which is just this huge, amazing, epic adventure that's based on the old serials. And then you've got Chopping Mall, which is just this awesome, gritty horror sci-fi movie of these guys stuck in the mall just getting blown up left and right by these little robot guards. It's a blast. I love that movie. It's too much fun.
The Killbots were amazing. They were amazing. It's so 80s too. It's like the shopping mall and the slang and the robots. I was like, I absolutely love this movie.
Everybody dancing to the music. Barbara Crampton.
Barbara Crampton.
It's great. One of the best. And she was in Search of Darkness, the film that came out before In Search of Tomorrow.
That's what I was going to talk to you about too, because I missed out on In Search of Darkness. I'm so glad that I will be getting the chance to see that, because I backed, the documentary, and I got the Flash Gordon set.
Yes.
So I get the
where that's included.
Yeah. So I'm so looking forward to watching both of those, because I absolutely love 80s horror, 80s sci-fi. I love all 80s movies, action, comedy. I mean, they're just perfect in my mind.
It's the stuff that, I grew up with loving. It's the stuff that I still watch. I have all these movies on Blu-ray that I love. Boutique DVD companies are like putting out, stuff that seemed like it was going to be lost on VHS, and never released again. So watching some of these old classics that I grew up with on like Cinemax and HBO and like late night cable and all that stuff, that's the whole thing is we're all from that era, part of this, community, and we're sharing all of that for people who are new to it, but we're also looking back on it and having fun because these are movies that, mean a lot to all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, you talk about the boutique DVDs and Blu-rays. I just bought, Return of the Killer Tomatoes, Arrow.
Nice.
I got that. I got the Blob, Scream Factory coming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Blob is awesome. I know you did a review of the Blob and a comparison of the old Steve McQueen one. And we actually, recently, we had a watch party with the 80s sci-fi community that we've built up on Discord. Everybody came together to watch the 80s version Blob. And we had Chet Zar, who is one of the guys that was on the film doing the practical effects of the Blob death scenes and all the crazy effects in the movie, talking about it while we were watching it. So he explained how they made the projectionist who was stuck to the ceiling. He talked about how they did the huge theater scene. He talked about the can man who goes to the doctor's office and, gets the reveal. Yeah.
That was good. That was good. That's cool. That's cool. And you guys have tons of these watch parties every day.
Every week. Yeah.
Every week.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Amazing.
The next one coming up is Blade Runner, and that's going to be with author Ian Nathan, who's written extensively on Blade Runner. His insight is something that's going to be awesome because everyone's going to be able to ask him questions about specific stuff from the movie, and we're just going to have fun watching the final cut. So,
oh man, that's awesome! The final cut. That's a masterpiece of a film.
For sure.
I love that movie. I love that movie.
Everything Ridley Scott wanted to put into it is there, so it's one of those that while we're watching it, we're going to just be digging into it and having a blast.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And who are some of the people that's going to be in this documentary that you can talk about?
Yeah. Oh, we have over 50 people that are now public on IMDb that you can look up. Some of my personal favorites, we've got John Carpenter. We've got Paul Verhoeven. We've got talking about Blade Runner. One of the most recent interviews we did was with Sean Young talking about Blade Runner, talking about Dune. Talking about a couple of her more obscure movies, and it was just great to have her, really getting into Rachel and everything that went into working for Ridley Scott and also David Lynch and working with Kyle MacLachlan. We've got Keith David from They Live, who's going to be on board. Yeah. We've got so many. Bill Duke from Predator, Jeanette Goldstein from Aliens, and also Mark Rolston. So we've got both Drake and Vasquez. So
that's awesome.
Them together talking about aliens is going to be a blast. Like I said, Phil Tippett, I could go down the whole list. We've got so many amazing people.
Man, I cannot wait. I cannot wait to watch this. I'm so glad I backed it. And if anybody wants to back it, it's in the description below, and I put it in the chat for you guys if you guys want to go back it. And because you're within the last 72 hours of it, right?
48. Yeah, 48 we are ending PST midnight on Sunday night. So that's 3 a.m. for everyone on the East Coast, 8 a.m. for everyone in Europe, around the UK, all that. But we are ending it Sunday night. And so far, it's been unbelievable to see the outpouring of all of the fans just coming together and backing the project and helping make this happen. So we're all, our whole team just unbelievably thankful to everybody who's jumping on board for this. And we're going to deliver the best movie for you guys. Everyone who wants to contribute to this and get a copy, you are going to get the hands down most ambitious 80s sci-fi documentary ever made. So
it's going to be great. I'm gonna just pick a day, pop it in, eat popcorn, and just binge it all the way through when I get it.
That's what everybody's been doing with the horror doc. Like In Search of Tomorrow, we have gotten so much feedback. I've heard from so many friends and so many fans that, they'll just turn it on at noon. And for like the entire afternoon, it'll be just hanging out, watching the entire decade just go by year to year, everybody chiming in on all the movies they were involved in, and make a day out of it. And I've got a bunch of buddies who make art and make different work at their houses, and while they're doing their thing, they just have it on, and it's just great. So we love being able to have like a 4.5, 5 hour documentary that people can just throw on and enjoy it. And, you know, for me, that's the exact same thing. Like, I'll have it on the side, and I might be playing like Predator Hunting Grounds on, you know, the other screen. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, you could just let it play and just have like all day enjoyment of doing whatever you want. Just hear it in the background and just soak up all this information, all these classics, stories and tales. And I'm excited for it. I'm truly excited for it.
Awesome.
It's gonna be amazing.
The fact that, you know, there are movies that not everybody has seen. Just like in Search of Darkness, there are going to be a couple of ones that everyone watching will go, oh, I missed that one. Oh, I got to check that out. I've never seen Extra. I've never seen this, you know, movie Contamination from Italy that was an alien knockoff, stuff like that, you know. So getting the response from that has always been one of the things that I love the most. When someone says, oh, man, I watched your movie and I had no idea this one even existed. I got to go and check it out. I got to see if I can get it on, you know, wherever, or get a copy.
That's probably what I'm going to do too. I'll probably write them down for the ones that I haven't seen so I can get them. Because I still haven't seen, like, I've never seen the original Dune.
Oh, yeah.
I've never seen that.
That movie's wild.
I've heard things about it. I've heard good things about it. I've heard bad things about it. So I want to see it. So I'll probably watch that before I watch the documentary so I can know a little more when I hear the interviews. So
yeah. Well, that's the thing too, is, you know, when we have people talking about the films they were involved in, we get into comprehensive discussion where they're like looking back, they're telling stories, they're talking about this is what was going on while we were on set. This is favorite, you know, story from what I remember, stuff like that. But that's the whole part of it, is it's not only just reflecting on these movies, it's celebrating them and giving the people who made these movies the chance to talk about them all together as we go through the entire decade. So
it's going to be
fun.
You guys are started from 1980 and going to 1989, right?
Yep. And we've got a couple of outliers because there were just a few movies that came right at the end of 1979 that we're going to, you know, just quickly touch on. Like, we're going to talk about The Black Hole, the Disney movie that was hugely influential for 80s sci-fi. So that'll be like just a really quick, all right, let's get this out of the way, and then let's dive straight into 1980 and then go 81, 82, 83, all the way to 89. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that give you some basis too, like where these movies started to come from. So
totally. Yep.
Yeah. So
and we're all about context, background, anything that actually adds value to the discussion of the movie. So getting all that out there is, you know, part of the whole thing.
Yeah, that's going to be good. I seen Flight of the Navigator was in the trailer, so that interests me. I love that movie. That's a good old classic right there. Yeah. I keep thinking about the trailer and all these like that I keep thinking in there. Scanners in there?
Yep. Scanners is in there. Yeah.
Scanners.
A lot of people remember that as being like a hardcore Cronenberg horror movie, but it's got a sci-fi plot. That's the whole thing, you know, that we're touching on, because there are some movies that sort of are on the fence between different genres. Like even with fantasy sci-fi, we're going to be talking about Krull, and we're going to be talking about Highlander. That's someone who I'm extremely happy is on board. I mean, the whole cast is amazing. Yeah. And the fact that we have Clancy Brown, the Kurgan, who's going to be talking about, oh man, like he's one of the best guys. And I've had conversations with him about sci-fi literature. Like, he is so hardcore into like Philip K. Dick, Ray Bradbury, Isaac Asimov. Like, there was a reason why when he got offered the part to be in Starship Troopers as Zim, he jumped at the chance. And, you know, we'll see about talking to him about 90s stuff when we eventually get there. But right now it's all about 80s.
That's awesome. It's just Clancy Brown, man, to see him, like, he's the Kurgan in Highlander, this badass guy. And then he's also Mr. Krabs. Yeah. It's like, talk about awesome right there. I mean, that's awesome. I love that guy.
You know, he's just one of those guys that I look up to as being one of the most prolific, like, genre actors and busy dudes from the 70s on. I mean, he's never stopped. He's either been in front of the camera or he's been doing voice work, or, you know, he's just been all over the place, and video games and everything. So the fact that he's like a hardcore sci-fi guy just adds that much more to, you know, how cool Clancy Brown is. So having him on board, I mean, he's just joining this amazing cast of all these people coming together for this, and it's just awesome.
That's gonna be good. I'm loving hearing what he has to say.
Yeah,
this is the guy. My man, and his voice too is just like
totally.
Yeah, awesome. It's awesome. Like you were saying, like when you were talking about Chopping Mall. It's like, how would you say that? Would you say that's a sci-fi film or a horror film? Because I know that was probably in both documentaries, right?
Yeah. Chopping Mall gets discussed in Search of Darkness, and for In Search of Tomorrow, it's the focus on the robots, you know, that being the huge sci-fi element. But, you know, just like a handful of other ones that are either killer robots like Saturn III with Harvey Keitel and Farrah Fawcett and Kirk Douglas, you know, that's a hardcore sci-fi movie, but it's also got that killer robot in it. It's got that horror side. You've got all the alien style movies with like the creature features. You've got Forbidden World. You've got Galaxy of Terror, which James Cameron worked on with Roger Corman, which is a great sci-fi movie. Yeah. But it's like a hardcore horror movie. You know, it's totally the haunted castle sort of thing in space. You know, it's just, that line is so much fun when you start getting into it. And we just put out a trailer for sci-fi horror movies that focus on all of that. So it's not just going to be like a specific pocket of sci-fi where we're only talking about the hard sci-fi stuff that's based on literature, or the sci-fi, you know, specifically tech, going out into outer space and trying to find other worlds. We're talking about the entire spectrum of, you know, what has science fiction elements in it. So we're extremely, like, you know, inclusive for everything that falls into the genre, and we want to explore it all.
I like that because you'll get a whole variety of films, and like you said, people will find films they've never even knew or considered sci-fi through that. So that'd be interesting.
One thing that we heard was when we were talking about discussing Superman 2, Superman 3, and Superman 4, you know, Superman, I've never thought about Superman as sci-fi. But, you know, you look into it, he is an alien who's come to Earth. Superman 3 is probably the most science fiction of all of them. Maybe Superman 4 being a little bit close, you know, and we've got to show some love for Quest for Peace, because it gets a really bad rap.
It does.
Deservedly for some reasons, but, you know.
I still watch it because I'm a huge Superman fan. He's like my all-time favorite hero, and I'll watch all of them all day long, and they're good.
We got one of the best people from the entire Superman series to be on board for In Search of Tomorrow. We've got Ursa. Sarah Douglas is in the cast. So getting her input on working with everyone in the film, everything that happened behind the scenes, being part of the Zod crew, you know, and then she has some other movies from the 80s that we're going to be talking about with her. Exactly. Return of Swamp Thing. Yep. Solar Babies. Return of Swamp Thing is great. You know, it's one of those like unsung sequels that actually has real merit to it.
I remember that was the first Swamp Thing movie I saw, because back in the day when you got cable for the first time, you know, you stay up late and you see all these movies, and Return of the Swamp Thing was one of the first, you know, that I saw. And I always loved that movie. And then I didn't know there was a first one. And then it was Wes Craven did it. And I was like, oh, I got to see this. And they're both awesome movies.
Wes Craven, Adrienne Barbeau, Ray Wise. The second one, you know, it just ups everything. Heather Locklear, it's got the entire plot of the Making Mutants, the, you know, whole development of what went on in that part of the Unmen, exactly, in the Swamp Thing comics. And then one of my favorite just moments of all Swamp Thing, because I even grew up with the 90s show, just loving that from that era. But Swamp Thing giving the thumbs up, that's always one of my favorite. Yeah.
I love that scene. And them two boys.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking, when I watched that, is like, I remember staying up late when you got cable for the first time, and like you see all these movies that you've never, like Princess Bride or Return of the Swamp Thing or the Return of the Attack of the Killer Tomatoes and stuff, and Elvira. Man, I rewatched Mistress of the Dark a couple days ago, and I haven't seen it in years, and man, I finally get all the innuendos and the jokes. I was like, I shouldn't have been watching this when I was like 12 years old.
Yeah. We were watching Pee-wee's Big Adventure the other day, where Cassandra Peterson shows up as the biker mama when he's leaving the Alamo, and he shows up at the biker bar, and like the level of humor in Pee-wee and in Mistress of the Dark, those are movies that totally work when you're a kid and they're a blast, and then you grow up and you're like, oh, these are awesome. So you finally get all the jokes, and it all just hits even better. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, I was watching that, I was like, did she just say that? I get that. I get that.
Well, one cool thing about Cassandra Peterson, she did a special edition version of In Search of Darkness with us. So we released 3 different special versions of In Search of Darkness. We had the Corey Taylor version, and Corey Taylor's just been announced for In Search of Tomorrow, because not only is he a hardcore horror guy, he's also a sci-fi guy.
Yeah.
So he's going to be joining us to talk about some of his favorite movies, and how as a fan they were when he first saw him and how they've endured for him. And I can't wait to see him dig into some really good ones.
Yeah, that'd be good.
The other ones we did were a Dead Meat version with James from his channel, and then the Elvira version where Cassandra Peterson sat down with us and went even deeper into movies that she remembers, movies that she loved, movies that she featured on her old show. And the Elvira edition was about 15-20 minutes longer than the theatrical version of In Search of Darkness. Yeah.
I missed out on that so bad. I missed it. But I can't wait to get the digital copy, though. That's going to be so cool.
Yeah, the theatrical version of In Search of Darkness is still 4.5 hours long. It's awesome. And if we ever do roll out more versions of In Search of Darkness, we're going to be getting the word out as soon as we're able to, because there's been so much love for that documentary. It's something more than any of us could have ever expected.
If it's going to be anything like, if the new one is going to be anything like that, I think you guys are going to have a bunch of demand for these things.
Yeah. We've already got demand for like a fantasy one. So we're thinking about, what we could do with that.
Is the Beastmaster sci-fi?
The Beastmaster is so close, but we're gonna say we'll put that one to the side for now. But I love Don Coscarelli. He's one of the best. And
the Phantasm movies.
Yeah. Well, Phantasm 2 pops up in the horror trailer that we just released. So, of course, we're gonna have to give some nod to that. Yeah. And it's one of those that I love, because Phantasm 2 and 3 were the first ones I watched of all the Phantasm movies, and then I finally was able to watch the first one when I got it on tape. But again, it goes back to those days of just late night cable TV and watching these, awesome genre movies that wound up becoming part of my formative years and part of like my core favorite movies.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's really what built my love of entertainment, is all those movies when you see them and the creativity that went into them, and just like, I don't know, there's just some kind of feel about those when you watch them. It's like, I love these, you know, it's something you can't really explain what it is.
Yeah. For me, I grew up in a house that had a bunch of movies on tape. We would just watch stuff on cable, and, sometimes we would record it and put a label on it and revisit it. And, it was great. And my family, I had like, family that were into classics and comedy and all these old films that were like level Hitchcock and different, old John Ford films and things like that. So that was all there. But then I had a couple of family members and an aunt that I grew up just hanging out with sometimes after school and stuff, who would really just get into sci-fi and horror. So she had like all of the old Star Trek, The Next Generation tapes. She had all of the movies. She had all of these crazy horror films that she loved, again, the Roger Corman stuff, the Charlie Band stuff from like Full Moon and Empire Pictures. I think, hanging out over there, I would see stuff like Robot Jocks and just, fall in love with movies like that. So those were ones that just stuck with me, and I always kind of got a sense of like they were kind of comfort films, but also like family related. So I look back on them as just being like, oh, these movies rock, but they also remind me of growing up and just loving them,
They got like a heart to them,
Yeah.
Like when you watch them, it's just like, even though it may not be a family movie, it feels like a family movie or something, It's hard to, I totally used to do that. Tape them. Like I watched Superman, the movie, and like the old Incredible Hulk show.
Yeah.
Like I remember, I think the first time I ever seen anything about that was like the Return of the Incredible Hulk. And I taped it off of TV, and then I like would watch the reruns on Sci-Fi. It was so great.
I remember like the Trial of the Incredible Hulk or whichever one that. Yeah. And totally Sci-Fi Channel too. I would watch Sci-Fi Channel and even the animated sci-fi movies from that era, like Sci-Fi morning anime or whatever it was that would come on at like 3 a.m. on Sci-Fi Channel. I'd see stuff like Akira, which, is one of the ones that we're absolutely touching on because that was such an important movie for global science fiction animation, and it like kind of has become one of those defining anime films that people are really hardcore about. But we're also talking about Transformers, the movie, and heavy metal. So we gotta, bring those to the table too, because those are just as much classics.
Yeah. I just recently bought the Transformers Steelbook, so
nice.
That's awesome. Yeah. So I'll be looking forward to hearing that.
Yeah, it looks better than ever. That transfer's amazing.
Oh yeah, it's really good. And I wonder if people actually realize that Transformers is like a sci-fi movie.
Totally.
Some people, like when you think about it, it's always just a cartoon with transforming robots. But when you really think about the story, they're aliens from Cybertron, and they come to Earth. So you're like, it is very sci-fi.
Yeah, really, really developed future technology. Just these awesome robot characters, planet jumping. I mean, the whole, antagonist of Transformers, the movie, being Unicron, which is even better because he's voiced by Orson Welles, who's one of the greatest filmmakers ever made, and an important figure in sci-fi too, if you want to go back to, some history stuff. Exactly. But we encompass all that stuff. Oh yeah. We have Adam Nimoy on board for In Search of Tomorrow. So he'll be coming in. He'll be talking about all of his work. He'll be talking about everything his dad did, and getting his insight and his input is going to be really valuable because, Leonard Nimoy was one of the best. I mean, we just watched Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home for a watch party, and everybody who was in for that in the group was just having an amazing time revisiting it. It's always a fun one.
I know that is a classic. Some people can't handle it because of the whole Wells stuff, but it's actually, if you watch it, it's really good. I mean, like they go back to the 80s.
Yeah.
Spock's got the headband on so he hides his ears, and it's great.
Of course, that scene in the bus where you've got the guy who's got the boombox. Yeah. Kirk Thatcher, who worked with the production team on that movie, and then he also was a huge part of the Jim Henson team. So, but just talking about the old Star Trek movies, I love them. I even love Star Trek V.
Oh yeah,
Final Frontier. Yeah. It's one of those that gets a lot of people snubbing it. Yeah. But when you watch it, it's still a lot of fun. Yeah, I love the fact that they gave Shatner his movie after they gave Nimoy his own. and what he did with it, I still have a huge place in my heart for that one.
Oh yeah, I like watching when they're camping and singing "Row, row, row the boat." Yeah. I like that. I mean, it's just
all
like
the mountain climbing and everything.
Yeah, Spock just like flies up with them boots.
And of course, what does God need with a starship?
Yeah.
So, but
it's a good one. I like it.
Yeah, we'll be getting to watch parties of course, Search for Spock, and the biggest one, Wrath of Khan. Yeah,
classic
there's
film.
no better Star Trek movie than that in my book.
Yeah,
that's the number one.
By far the best. I could probably watch that one. That one and Empire. I could probably watch them two movies constantly. They're just so good. Just like they like define the genre of space adventure for me.
Totally. They're the most, I think, important movies of that kind, from that time. And this is an era of sci-fi movies that is some of the best that were ever made and will ever be made. There have been incredible science fiction movies in every decade since the genre really started moving forward. But when you look at some of these, that came out between 80 and 89, I mean, it's hard to top. And Star Trek and Star Wars, they sit at the top of the pile just for their cultural relevance and how incredibly popular they became and how big they were in the production. But they're also amazing stories. Wrath of Khan and Empire, they're great. I mean, there's, no denying that they're just unbelievable movies and some of the best for sure.
And the story they both tell about heroes and loss and just like family. I love it. It's just
all the themes, struggle.
Exactly. Yeah. They hit every right note in every act of the films. I mean, they're just so great.
Yeah. And, just as entertainment, you can watch those movies. I mean, I know I can anytime. Like, definitely. Just throw it on and, get sucked in immediately. And then by the time it's over, it's always a blast. Yeah.
I remember that. One day there was Star Trek, the first movie was on, and you see Bones and he pops on and he's like complaining and you just get into it and you get into it and then you watch it and you're like, how about we go to Wrath of Khan next? And then how about Search for Spock? And you just keep going.
Yep.
It's just, you get pulled into these films. They're just that good.
Totally.
So I love them. Now some of the John Carpenter's ones, The Thing.
Yeah, of course.
Thing. And what are some of the other ones you guys got going on in there?
Yeah, we got They Live, which I can't wait. Like I was saying, Keith David is one of my favorite guys who's amazing in The Thing and in They Live. Right there with Roddy Piper, one of the best fight scenes.
I love that fight scene. I was about to bring it up. It's like 30-minute long fight scene. It's just amazing.
And his stories from that too were so great. How he was told by Roddy Piper, all right, just punch me in the gut. And it was a thing that Keith David had never done. He wasn't that kind of an actor. He wasn't that kind of a performer. He'd never really done fight scenes like that. But, he would go a little bit too hard into Roddy, and Roddy would just take it and be like, all right, that was good. Let's keep going. And they just have so much fun in that scene. Like when the back shield window gets smashed and Roddy Piper's just laughing. I'm all out of bubble gum. Yep. Yeah. Oh man. Other than those, John Carpenter made Starman in the 80s, and that's one, it gets overlooked way too much.
Yeah. That'd be good. That'd be interesting.
Yeah, Jeff Bridges is awesome in that. Yeah.
So it's like classic. And speaking of Roddy Piper, one I haven't seen, which I saw in your guys' trailer, was Hell Comes to Frogtown.
Yeah, Frogtown.
I've never seen that, and so I'm definitely going to be watching that before this comes out, because I almost forgot that movie even existed. And when I saw it in the trailer, I was like, "That's Frogtown! I got to see that."
Yeah. It's one of those. It's a film that really took off after Escape from New York and Mad Max came out, because there was that huge wave of all of these post-apocalyptic kind of like lone gunman, one guy lead character movies who's out there just being awesome. We go down the rabbit hole with that stuff. I mean, you look at, all of the Mad Max knockoffs from the States and from Italy, especially, like some of those are just awesome. But yeah, Hell Comes to Frogtown is a really fun one. It's got a great sense of humor to it, and all the aliens with the frog masks and the whole plot and the adventure. Yeah, it's worth a watch for sure.
Yeah, definitely gonna have to check that out. And The Stuff.
Yes.
I've yet to see The Stuff. So them and Dune are on my list to make sure I watch before this documentary.
Awesome. Yeah, so Larry Cohen, one of the best for sure.
Yeah,
because we had Larry Cohen talking with us in Search of Darkness, and since he passed, we all really look back on that as just a treasured memory and thing that we were able to do. Same thing with Stuart Gordon. I mean, both of those guys were hugely influential in the genre communities, for horror and sci-fi. And Reanimators, just one of those absolute classics. Again, Barbara Crampton right there with Jeffrey Combs, two of the best. And From Beyond as well. That's right there between horror and sci-fi where, you ride the line and it's just a wild time the entire film. It's great.
Yeah. So, that's cool. Those guys, I don't know. It's like like I said, I just can't put the word on what they have created. It's just so good all around,
Yeah, for sure. Some of these have been cult classics. Some of them get reignited when they show up on different streaming services like Shudder and things like that. The fan base is always there. And that's one of the biggest things too, is that, we have opened the doors for all the fans of these movies to join, to back the film. We can get them on board for the Discord where we have all of the watch parties with special guests and events. And it's just bringing the community together because, when we're all talking about these movies and we're all having a good time, it's just infinitely rewarding. Like, I know every time I get to chat with anybody about this stuff, it just makes my day. And that's for everyone. We want to,
I get to talk to these movies from the time I wake up to the time I go to bed. I've just set that much of a movie nerd for all this stuff.
Totally.
So amazing.
Well, that's the same thing with me. I grew up loving these films so much, and they're just a huge part of my life that when I finally got the ability to, I wanted to, share that with everybody. I've been writing articles, reviews, doing news and interviews for years, and I've taken that into what we're doing here now with our incredible team. David Weiner as our director who directed In Search of Darkness and is directing In Search of Tomorrow. He has such a great vision for this film that when it's all put together and it's all ready to come out next year, it's just going to be the best thing that could ever be delivered. So it's going to be such a blast. Yeah.
I would guarantee it is. It's good. And I lost my train of thought. I was just thinking about the movie. But
I was going to say real quick, he was a guy who, he really cut his teeth in the industry in these films, working for Full Moon and for Charles Band and being a part of productions like James Cameron's The Abyss. He was there for all this stuff. So he's bringing that to the table behind the camera to make it so when we're all watching this documentary, we get the best thing possible as we're going through all these years and digging into all these films.
That's cool though. He said not only do you have the talent and the chemistry in front, you got it behind you too, So that makes things work, brings it all together. I like that. We're coming up on the 38-minute mark. We'll go for a couple minutes longer and talk a little more. What was I going to say? I keep losing my train of thought. I keep thinking about this. So who do you got all coming from the John Carpenter films? Besides John Carpenter, who do you got all? And Keith David, who else do you got?
Yep. So we've got, off the top of my head, the lead actress from Starman, who was also in the other couple of films, Indiana Jones, the first movie, the Raiders of the Lost Ark, and also Scrooge. Yep. So, she's going to be awesome coming in and talking about Starman. We've got some more people that we are kind of holding off on announcing just yet before we have them 100% confirmed. But once, we're able to reveal everybody, it's going to be great just putting out all those casting announcements. Yeah.
Yeah. So
there are a couple of people from the different John Carpenter movies that I can't really get into, but reaching out to them, I can't wait until they're confirmed. It's going to be a blast. Yeah. But in Search of Darkness, we did have Tom Atkins talking about a ton of movies from 80s horror, and he's one of the best guys ever.
Yeah, Tom Atkins is in Night of the Creeps.
Yeah. Yep. Which again, horror sci-fi.
Yeah, horror sci-fi right there. Aliens, it's slugs.
Talking about movie. One that's kind of similar, Critters. We've got Dee Wallace.
I was going to ask you about the Critters. With that in there, yeah.
Yep, Critters and Critters 2, of course. Yeah. So having Dee Wallace on board to talk about Critters and E.T. is going to be great. We've got Henry Thomas as well. So we've got Elliot and Elliot's mom, which is going to be excellent to, have them discuss making one of the most, impactful family movies of the entire decade. You look at Spielberg and what he had put out, and E.T. is absolutely one of the top.
Oh, yeah. Spielberg is just a master.
For sure.
Those movies like Goonies and, I know he didn't direct it. That was Richard Donner, but he knew what to make. He knew what to back. So he did. I like that. Yeah, that'll be interesting to hear Dee Wallace. She was in The Howling, wasn't she?
That's right. Yeah. And we have Joe Dante. So we'll be talking about, I'm a huge fan of Inner Space and of Explorers.
Yes.
Those were two of my favorite movies that I loved watching and rewatching as a kid. And to have him be on board to talk about those and to get into, making those movies and how he did the effects and how he just
Martin Short turning into
put everything together. Yeah. Yes.
It's like, I love that thing.
Oh, man. Vernon Wells is someone who's also on the cast, and having him on board to talk about Mr. Igo, the guy with the detachable hand who winds up getting miniaturized as well for the final fight at the end of the movie.
I love that.
But also he's going to be talking about Road Warrior.
Oh, yeah.
So, we got to give huge props to all the Mad Max movies and everything that George Miller did to, create what the entire genre, the subgenre of post-apocalyptic sci-fi was, Yeah,
he really did set a tone for those films. So it's good. Some of them good, some of them bad, but he set a good tone for those. So that's good.
I still love them. I'll put on some of those old ones like Warriors of the Wasteland anytime. Because even if they're warts and all, they're still a blast. They're a ton of fun,
That's why I don't like when people say, "Oh, this movie's so bad it's good." I'm like, no, it's good. It's not bad at all.
If it's entertaining, it's entertaining. If you get a charge out of it while you're watching it, whether it's an awesome action movie that gets you amped up, or a movie that, whether it's intentional or not, winds up being hilarious, it's still fun.
It's still good. Yeah, I mean,
totally.
What if it wasn't a huge success or didn't win an Oscar? Doesn't mean it's a bad movie.
Yeah. That's the thing too. Some of these movies we love, even if they're not critically acclaimed, even if they didn't make huge numbers at the box office or even get a theatrical release. Some of them are straight to video classics that have been, discarded and left on the shelf and have collected dust, but we're getting into them. So when you look at all of 80s sci-fi and you see, these different movies that people have completely forgotten about for the last 30 plus years, we just, want to readdress it and uncover it and be like, hey, this is worth checking out. And, here's our love for it.
Exactly. That's how I feel. Like, people say Flash Gordon. Like I talked about, like they say that's a bad movie. No, that was not a bad movie. That was a very good movie. And I would say to kids of today, if you liked Guardians of the Galaxy, watch Flash Gordon.
Totally.
Because, it's just as good.
Absolutely. Some of the comedies similar, some of the humor beats, some of the action.
Exactly.
It's this huge scale movie. And there's just so much going on, and there are so many great performances. And we've got both the leads from Flash Gordon. You know, we've got Sam J. Jones and we've got his girlfriend. It's just, you know, amazing to have them back together to join us and be talking about Flash.
That's awesome.
And, you know, everything and its history and its legacy and how it's still an entertaining space adventure even today. But another one that's a really ambitious movie that has one of my favorite actors in it who's on the documentary with us is Space Hunter Adventures in the Forbidden Zone. So
if you've seen that one,
if you've got a chance to check that one out, check out Space Hunter, and it's Ernie Hudson. So yep, we've got him on board. He'll be talking about Ghostbusters. He'll be talking about Leviathan, which is another one of those awesome 80s underwater horror movies that, you know, I love, straight up with Deep Star 6 and The Abyss to a degree, because there are a couple of moments of pretty intense, you know, stuff in that one.
Yeah.
Oh man, like Michael Biehn as Coffee. Yeah. Oh, so great. But yeah, Space Hunter's a blast. It's one of those that I definitely say check it out if you haven't had a chance. Yeah.
Space Hunters, what was it?
Adventures in the Forbidden Zone.
Space Hunters Adventures in the Forbidden Zone. Yeah.
In 3D. 3D. One of those, you know, that fell in the trend, like right there with Metal Storm, movies that were made and, you know, they were marketed in 3D. That reminds me, another member of the cast that we have, Tim Tomerson, who you might know from Trancers and Dollman. He was also in Cherry 2000, which is one of the ones that we'll be touching on. But yeah, it's amazing that we've got, you know, so many people from across the board. Some of the most, you know, beloved, remembered sci-fi movies from the 80s, and then some from the ones that like the really hardcore, you know, deep cut fans love. We're going to be, you know, touching on all of it.
That's good. It's going to be good. Like you said, it'll give everybody a wide variety of films they haven't seen or forgotten, and that they have seen, from films that are cult classics to mainstream success. It's just going to be so entertaining. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome.
To hear all these stories. I love hearing like the stories from these actors from the day and what they put into these films, and like you said, the prosthetics and the practical effects and everything. Just that stuff is so interesting. It just like movie making at its best.
Yeah, totally. You know, the stories of what everybody had to go through on RoboCop for all of the crazy effects, like Paul McCrane, who got hit by the SUX and exploded after he got covered in toxic waste. You know, we've got a great story that I love. One of my favorite stories is even just about getting up every morning and getting ready to go out and shoot the movie. Bill Duke was talking about how every morning for Predator, Arnold would run a basic, you know, workout camp from like 4 a.m. until 8 o'clock, where they would go up and like go out and run 15 miles and then come back and just lift weights until they were ready to shoot the movie every day. And Bill Duke did that for about 2 weeks and was like, nope, I'm done.
No, I can't do it. I can't keep up.
I love stuff like that, you know. That's everybody tells personal stories and gets into it. That's always fun.
It's something you normally wouldn't hear in modern interviews.
yeah, for sure. And, you know, everyone put so much into these movies. I mean, it's unbelievable what like Peter Weir went through when he was getting suited up for RoboCop every single day, you know, and what everyone did, you know, during stuff like Buckaroo Banzai, with how crazy or ambitious that movie was, you know. It's so cool.
So many people in that Buckaroo Banzai. Jeff, was Jeff Goldblum in that?
Yep.
Yeah, Goldblum, just craziness. I love that movie.
You know, Christopher Lloyd, who was also in Star Trek 3. I mean, and you know, you can't forget Doc Brown. I mean, it's just unbelievable how, like, when you connect the threads between all these movies, you see so many people doing so much on all these different films. And we were watching Spaceballs just yesterday for a watch party with the guys from Midnight's Edge, and that was just fantastic. Yeah, and you know, we were talking about all of the production team who went into that. And you had guys who had worked on like Dune with David Lynch. You had guys who worked on different stuff like the Superman movies, the Star Wars movies, all these, you know, really, really high-end productions. And George Lucas had a huge role in getting Spaceballs made because Mel Brooks directly approached him and said, "Hey, can I do this?" And George Lucas was like, "Of course, I've seen all your movies. I know you're going to make something amazing." So when you watch Spaceballs and you see in the diner scene where they do the whole John Hurt getting the chest burster at the bar and all the, you know, jokes there, just outside of the diner, there's the Millennium Falcon. And it's because ILM was completely involved, you know, during the entire process. So it's great that everyone was working together in different capacities to make all these movies.
That explains why that film is so good. Besides
it looks
Mel Brooks,
amazing. Yeah. Well, he knew how to get a great crew together. And even Lucas gave him a couple of scenes that weren't used in the original Star Wars to use, like when the pods are ejecting out of Spaceball 1. Those are little deleted, you know, clips from Star Wars that he said, "Here, put them in your movie."
That is awesome. I did not know that, and that makes that movie even so much more enjoyable now. Just to know that George Lucas himself had a hand in on that movie, it just is amazing.
Yeah, and that's you know, that's the kind of trivia and the stuff like that we love sharing and we love bringing to everybody, because you know, it just makes it all that much more fun. Like, oh my god, I didn't know that, you know, and we can all share that with each other and just have fun remembering just how good these movies were.
Definitely. All right, we're at 51 minutes. I think we'll close it down. Thank you, Andrew, for being on here.
Yeah, Greg, thank you so much for having me. This was awesome.
Yeah, it is. And anybody out there who wants to back this, you got 48 hours, midnight Sunday, Pacific Standard Time.
Yep.
And back it, because you guys will want to see this. It's going to be awesome. And we're going to end it right now.
Awesome. Thank you again.